Were you a bookworm as a little kid? Did you turn into a bookworm as you got older? Is your to be read pile actually piles of books all over the house that never seem to get any smaller no matter how much you keep reading? Are you someone who takes a book with you everywhere you go because you just can't think of not having something to read in your downtime? Well, this episode's for you. At the back half, we're going to be talking about the habit of reading and getting into how it lasts you your entire life. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Back Half Podcast. Today, we're going to be diving back into some of the books that changed my life. This time, we're going to be talking about the way we got into reading, what we've gotten from reading, and what we hope to get from it in the future. And joining me today is Louis Bayard, a friend of mine from way back. We're both middle-aged gay white men.
We certainly are.
Yeah. So Lou is the author of The Wilds, a novel in 5 parts, or a novel in 5 acts, sorry. Jackie and Me, Courting Mr. Lincoln, and The Pale Blue Eye, which I think some of you may recognize because it was adapted by Netflix recently with Christian Bale. And I'm assuming that was pretty exciting.
It didn't suck. It didn't.
It did not. And also, he has recently written a piece in the Washington Post, which he's written for pretty often over the years, on how his reading habits have changed at this point in life. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity for us to kind of chat and see how our paths have differed and what books have meant to us, from the beginning and to now. So welcome aboard.
It's great to be here. It's great to see you, Sean. It's been a minute, as the kids say, since last.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, we had lunch sometime in. It was before I got my real estate license that we had lunch.
Yeah.
I remember that. I think it was Mr. Henry's.
Yeah, probably.
So,
yeah.
And seeing you in a Vietnamese restaurant and things like that.
Yeah. With my Vietnamese born adopted son. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever told you, you wrote a piece for the Washington Post when you adopted your oldest son, and it had a line in it that has always stuck with me. It was basically about the wonder of being seen through new eyes. And I've just always thought that was one of the most lovely ways to look at having a new child in your life.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Yeah,
you're gonna make me cry now thinking about that time.
Well,
but yes, it's
he's
true.
Is he out of college now?
He is out. He's 25, but he's living back home, as is his younger brother. So it's still a full house. The empty nest turns out to be a bit of a lie, Sean. I don't know if.
Well, we've ours. Andrew is off doing his. I think Andrew is the exact same age as your oldest son. So he's out of college and off working, living with his mom. And I'm like, you need to get a place of your own so you can learn to take care of yourself. So you don't expect some woman to do it. But...
yeah. No, ours haven't quite launched yet, but they are both employed for the time being. So I'm just having my blessings where I find them.
Cool.
Yeah. What a journey.
So, I know it's a journey with Andrew that I never expected to take. So I kind of wanted to jump in a little bit from the beginning because I think the way that people become readers can sometimes, we all jump in at different points and things like that. I was a reader from before first grade, and I started first grade at 5 years old. I was very young when I started, but I was like at 4, I was already reading the comics pages and working my way through the newspaper and stuff like that. But really the thing that got me where I knew I really loved reading and I knew I wanted to be a writer as well was like Kurt Vonnegut and Cat's Cradle and Stephen King and The Shining. Both books that my parents had no idea I was reading because I was far too young to be reading either one of them. So, and obviously they've stuck with me both stylistically and mentally over the years. Kind of just what were some of the books that did the same with you, if that's kind of how you got into it?
Yeah, well, let me step back even further because I had a couple gateway drugs to reading. And one of them was classics illustrated comic books. You speak of, comic strips and comics. I don't know if you experienced these as a kid, but they were these really well-mounted, very faithful comic book adaptations of famous novels. So, Tom Sawyer and Oliver Twist and Moby Dick and Pudd'nhead Wilson, all these stories. And it was just a wonderfully accessible way for a young kid to come up with these stories. And I got to the other side of them and thought, oh, now I want to read the book. So that's how I found David Copperfield. That's how I found Huckleberry Finn. And Twain and Dickens probably were my favorite authors growing up, but it's because I had that introduction. And the other one is, I think I'm older than you because I'm not sure you would know Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, I know Mr.
Mr.
Magoo.
Magoo. So he was a cartoon character. I think he'd been around since the early 50s, but he was kind of old and bald and hard of hearing. So he would forget but he was also in his later incarnations a professional actor. So that he would act the roles of these different. He was Ishmael in Moby Dick. I believe he was Scrooge in Christmas Carol. So again, this was another lovely way to get into the classics. And when I read Moby Dick decades later for the first time, I was like, oh, that's right. I remember when Mr. Magoo did that part. It all came back to life. So those were my entry gates. But I loved, as I said, Dickens and Twain. I also loved mysteries. I loved Agatha Christie. Two of my seminal reading experiences, reading The Hound of the Baskervilles for the first time and reading Murder on the Orient Express. I was just so thrilled. I couldn't wait to get to the end of those books, and that's what any good mystery or any good thriller will do for you. So from the start, I think I was living in genre, but also in literature and loving everything I found there.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was super genre. I was more, science fiction and horror stuff. I got hooked on that really fast. And I still have all my little Stephen King ripoff short stories that I wrote when I was like 11 or 12 years old.
What did you rip off? What did you rip off from exactly?
Um, his his tendency to do interior thoughts as like that italicized parentheses where somebody's thinking and then they do the sub thinking,
Oh, yeah.
like it's I tended to rip that kind of stuff off. And then just really, really clumsy attempts at sexual behavior that I didn't really understand what I was trying to do.
What about the
And
one sentence paragraphs? He's great at that stuff. Yeah.
I tried a little bit of that. And then I got a little bit more. I left behind the demon baby stuff that I was writing and started writing about space roller coasters and stuff like that, which I actually submitted those to some magazines and I never got published, but I got lots of like really supportive, hey, you're doing really good for a 13-year-old, keep at it, that kind of thing.
Well, that's nice. They go
But
back to you. That's nice.
yeah, things used to be different. When I was a kid, people responded to me. When I was an adult, it's always like crickets whenever I
Well, you
send
don't want to
anything
crush
in.
a kid. I think even if I don't think most people would want to crush a kid's dreams and
I
hopes.
I would hope.
You'd hope not. Yeah.
But yeah, so my classic stuff, I was really lucky because I grew up in a house, my mom in particular, but my dad as well, read a lot. We had collections of classic books. We had world book, child book, things that people have no idea what those are anymore.
World Book,
Um, but I read all of those kind of religiously. But it put me in this state because I don't think I ever really got into classics that much as a kid, but I picked up a lot about them. So by the time I was in high school, I knew a lot about classics, but I hadn't necessarily read them. So I was like the literature expert on my high school academic team because I could answer questions about
Me
Dickens, even
too.
though.
Me too. Yeah. We
Oh,
have a
okay.
lot in common, Tom. World Book.
I
We
know.
have a lot in common.
Did you do a TV show with your academic team?
It was called. It's still around. It's called. I think it's academic. It is a
Yeah.
DC area. I think Baltimore too. Laura Lippman
Okay.
was on that many years ago. There's a few of us writer types who had their TV debuts on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the Kentucky Educational Television. It's academic. So I wish I could find a tape of it. It's
I'll be
I have
afraid.
been
I've seen the pictures. I'm wearing a paisley tie, 3-piece suit. This is we're talking late 70s. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
not a
think I
good
was
look.
81.
And I
So
look about 9 years old, even though I'm 15. I look at 9. Yes.
I know I had like my favorite little Sergio Valente square bottom tie. So
Oh
no,
man.
those were fun. Those
Yeah,
it's the only time a
I'm not
band
going
ever
back.
played for me.
Yeah, not going back. Not going back.
Oh, excuse me. So I'll probably get us off track a multitude of
That's
times.
all right.
But one thing I was kind of curious about as well is I have a habit that has stuck with me pretty much all my life. When I go to bed, I pretty much have to read like at least 2 or 3 pages. I've been doing that since I was very young, um, secretly sometimes, because you're supposed to be in bed and asleep. But even though now I have a big lazy boy that I like to read in at this point, um, which is bizarre that I ended up with a lazy boy. It's like I'm more like my dad than I thought I was. But even if I sit in that chair for like 2 hours reading, I get up, go to bed, and I have another book that is just something I need. Are there any habits that you've had over the years that have just stuck with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am a nighttime reader too, and I always have a huge stack of my TBR pile by the bed, so that's always there. But as I get older, I find I can read for less time before I just sort of nod off. So I'm actually still trying to figure out ways to read during the day. Like I think if I get up like a half hour early, I can just get a half hour reading in the morning. But instead, I just wind up finding playing Sudoku, reading Carolyn Hobbs, and things like that. I don't fill it up with reading. So one of my challenges is just to kind of get, believe it or not, is just to reintegrate reading into my daily routine more than it currently exists. Because yeah, I don't think I get more than 2 or 3 pages if I'm in bed. And it takes a long time to read a book that way, as you know. So yeah, I'm trying to figure. And I sometimes wish that I could be one of those people. Ron Charles, who is the Post book critic, and
Hmm.
has a wonderful blog on publishing and stuff. He told me that he can read a book in 2 or 3 hours, which I find astonishing. But I know of other people like him where they just and I don't think I think they retain it all. They review it, but I could never read a book that quickly. I don't think.
How how many books do you, if you were putting your mind to it? I know this is very
Yeah,
hypothetical because I mean I've been known as a fast reader, and I read an amazing amount of stuff a day because I'm addicted to newspapers and
yeah.
I'm constantly reading. But a book can still take me quite a bit of, at least a week if it's, anything over 500 pages probably. How long does it take you to read like an average novel, do you think?
Oh gosh, at least a week, I think. Again, it depends how much time I have available. It's funny you say that because I went to an event with Ian Lee, a novelist who teaches at Princeton, and she was getting an award for short stories. And she said that she actually doesn't like when people tell her that they sprinted through one of her books, that they couldn't stop reading. No, I don't take that as a compliment. I take that as kind of a veiled insult because nothing is holding you down you're just skedaddling through there. So I think
Hmm.
part of the reason I'm a slower reader is that I am kind of under the hood all the time with any book that I'm reading. I'm looking at it from the perspective of another writer and asking, okay, why did they make that choice? Oh, that's an interesting way to delay the reveal. Oh, okay, I get where. So it's that kind of dual process of what's on the page and then filtering it through my own writer sensibility. And I think that's why it takes me as long as it does. Now there are some books, a good thriller. I just read something by Harlan Coben on a transatlantic flight, and it just raced through that because that's greased that for you. That's something you're supposed to be reading.
Yeah, it's written
It's
for
written
it's written for that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's its whole purpose. But so yeah, sometimes I will just read a thriller or something more genre-y, just to kind of get myself out of it and let the book take over. But even a genre exercise, I'll still be under the hood, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder why you cut off the scene there. I can't stop that part of myself, the writing self, the editing self, whatever. It's hard to silence that.
I think my again going really far back, my high school English teacher, Jerry Hensley, um because I had talked to him at one point about the fact that I mean I read all the time. I was the kid who always had 1 to 2 books with me everywhere I went. I was the one that all the kids went to for the horror novels that their parents wouldn't let them read. I was
I
popular, at
love
least
you.
for
You were
kids
like a
who
little
for kids who read.
dispensary for.
Uh, yes, I remember my friend Ricky came back. His mother found a copy of The Shining that I gave him, and it was wrapped in butcher paper because she did not need to even see it on
That's
the way
hilarious.
back. Yeah. But, so I was a voracious reader, but I had trouble reading a lot of like assignment reading, getting into My Antonia or, all these, things that you read in high school. And he told me, he was like, you've learned to read for pleasure really young and you just haven't developed the skills
Muscle, right?
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that ever an issue for you? Because it sounds like you were reading some pretty classic stuff early on,
Yeah, I
compared to what I was
was.
doing.
I was. I'm now remembering that in addition to the World Book in our living room, our family room, I should say, we also had this collection called the Great Books. It was this whole, I think University of Chicago
Yeah.
put it out. They had caramel,
I've seen
yeah,
those.
caramel
Yeah.
colored bindings, and it was started from, I don't know, Plato on through, and also the great minds of Western, a lot of dead white men, in short.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to work through those. I got very ambitious. I thought I'll start with Plato, and I didn't get far at all. So I don't know how much of a highbrow I really was. I really did just enjoy a good story. It's funny you mention horror movies because the movie I wanted to see, this was back in '73, was of course The Exorcist. That was the one
Uh,
movie, R-rated movie, that my parents would not let me see because there'd been so much talk about, I don't know, people fainting and screaming, and uh, so I said, well, can I read the book? And that was, my parents would always let me read the book if I asked. So that The Exorcist was the one book I read, and it really did freak me out, actually, quite a bit.
Now, I missed The Exorcist just by a bit. I saw it. I didn't see it until it made it to like broadcast television. So
It
you
was
can
a while,
imagine
and
it
then of
was
course it
like,
was heavily edited.
yeah, I mean, it was insane how edited it
Yeah.
was. Um, but it's funny. My grandmother had a collection of Reader's Digests
Oh,
books. So like
yes,
the
we had
abridged version of
condensed book.
popular novels.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I picked up a few things through there as well. But actually, I got so much of my culture. You mentioned the comics. I got a lot of my culture through Mad Magazine. That's how I knew about movies. I
Love
mean,
Mad Men.
you could read them and
Yeah.
you would understand a movie. Like I knew Marathon Man, never saw Marathon Man, but I read the
Yeah.
Mad Magazine and you had a take on it
Yeah.
if you saw that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I have a,
Yeah. So smart and so smart. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I have a stack of them on the other side of my desk over here.
Nice.
I am
Nice.
such a pack rat.
You need to go back and
um,
revisit some of those because I love those, the movie parodies in particular. I did get my
yeah, they
son
were
Spy
great.
versus Spy as a kind of a collected volume of Spy versus Spy.
Loved them.
Yeah.
And Sergio Aragonés is the little things and the
Mhm.
margins and just so much
They were
wonderful stuff.
geniuses. I don't Geniuses. We don't have anything like that anymore. At least not that I know of. Yeah.
Not that I know of
Yeah.
either. And I try to keep up. But are you someone who always, I mentioned I've always been someone who carries a book around and always have something to read, which technology has made that a lot easier these days. But was that a habit of yours or have
Yeah.
you
Well,
been able to?
anytime I had to go on a trip somewhere, I always make sure to bring up. I don't have an e-reader or anything like that. Maybe if I traveled more, I get one, but I always bring a book with me if I'm traveling anywhere because I do dread those moments where you're sitting in a car or, you can listen to. There are other things we can do. We can listen to podcasts, and those can be interesting. But no, it is a security blanket for me for sure, for sure.
Okay. Do you have an attachment? You mentioned you don't have an e-reader. I'm huge on my Kindle. I'm about half and half. So do you feel very attached to
I do.
the physical experience?
I do. I love the physical. I think above all, I love the smell of a book. I love to actually sort of inhale it a little bit
Yeah.
before I kick in. There was, again, a sort of a seminal reading experience for me as a kid. It was like I forced myself to read Gone with the Wind because I wanted to see the movie, so I had to read the book for it. And it's a long ass book. And of course, it would be on nobody's reading list today for various reasons. But I remember above all, there was the cover which had Vivian Lee in Clark Gable's arms, which was very sexy. But then the book itself just had this scent that I can't really define for you. But I just remember just inhaling it like glue or something, but more pleasant. Maybe it probably was glue. Come to think of it, I was glue sniffing from Don McLean. But Yeah. So it's the sensuality of a book that I still love. I love the touch. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the smell of a book. It's kind of up there with new car smell and
Yeah.
things. Except books, old books have a good smell too, unless they've been badly taken care of.
Yeah,
But
that dusty thing they have, which is, but not just dust. It's also, I know, it's
it's
probably
just
dead
it's
insects or stuff like
a dead silverfish.
that.
But it's like I still have all my books, almost all my books from when I was a kid. Star Trek novels and this and that and everything else. Um, yeah, I do. I've really been getting back into physical books. I'd stop. The reason I went to an e-reader or the Kindle is because I just don't have a lot of space
Me
anymore. I mean,
neither.
I have books piled everywhere. My to be read is actually piles all over the place because I used to go absolutely wild at Barnes and Noble or any bookstore that I was in. So I switched, but lately, I found the compromise is I've been checking a lot of stuff out from my library to catch up on some stuff. But I guess that leads to kind of the next thing I wanted to kind of get into. Since I started this project with the back half and everything, I'm not somebody I've been a professional writer, but I've never written about fiction or books. I've done a couple of reviews here and there, and I've certainly interviewed authors like you, Michael Chabon, and, people who are in the industry, but I've never read fiction professionally, and so I've been reading a lot closer for the past year. And I've started taking notes on pretty much everything I read and just trying to change the habits a little bit because one, I want to teach myself to read a little bit better because I do have that tendency to fly through. I would probably offend your friend accidentally because sometimes even if I find myself two chapters in or, it's like I have to go back real quick because I'm going so fast. Um, and the other is I want to go back and finish a lot of writing projects that I've kind of gotten halfway through. I've got a couple of novels I'm halfway through, and I'd like to, regardless what happens to them, I'd like to finish them. And I have other ideas for stuff that I'd like to get around to. And I think it's changing the way I read, and I found that really helpful. Have you changed the way that you read over time? I mean, particularly because
Yeah.
you're a professional fiction writer and you've taught and you do book reviews. Is there a bifurcation between that type of reading, and has it changed over time?
Yeah, I will say that as a professional reader, because I think every professional writer should be a professional reader at some level. I think we have to look
Mhm.
our reading in a critical and reflective way because I think it makes us better. But I find that as a result, I don't do a lot of pleasure reading, which saddens me. So a lot of what the reading I do is for research. I'm researching a given book. Right now, I'm researching a book that's set in Victorian London. So I'm kind of reading around that period, reading books that were written in that era, plays, and and I'm literally underlining. I'm harvesting idioms and facts and details. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, as you said, a lot of reading for review purposes. Um, although most of what I review now is nonfiction, which I appreciate. It's a nice break. And then, yes, I used to read student fiction. Also, sometimes I've just been asked to blurb somebody's book, so that comes up a lot. So the amount of actual pleasure reading I do is quite limited, and that bums me out a little bit. But I will say, it's the other on the same transatlantic flight where I was reading Harlan Coben. I finally got around to reading Carson McCullers' *The Member of the Wedding*, which is a book I've always been meaning to get around to. I had tried *Hard as a Lonely Hunter* some years back and couldn't get through it, but this book was just so exquisite. And for the first time, I sat there on this plane reading this gorgeous, gorgeous coming of age novel about this young girl named Frankie, and it's just so beautifully realized. It was pure pleasure. I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't under the hood. I was just letting it flow over me. So my challenge going forward is just going to try to create more reading experiences like that for me because it's hard in my household to do a lot of reading during the day. It's hard, but I would love to have to know that experience again because it reminded me of why I used to love reading.
Do you, when you take notes, do you write in books or do you take notes separately outside of
I
them?
I, I do a lot of underlining.
Okay.
Um, and then I will transpose it onto my computer or something. I don't have any great technological genius here. But
Okay.
for instance, I have a whole document of late 19th century British idioms, phrases that sort of leap out at me that convey the period. So I've got a whole long list of them that I will occasionally read through, and I'm taking notes about clothing, about transportation, and then the challenge at the other side of that is not to dump it all back into the book, because there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than reading a historical novel where the author's research is there on view from page one,
Yeah.
because it's deadly, because it kills the story and it takes you out of the reality of it. Uh, you know, to me, the best historical novels are the ones that go into that world obliquely, so you're not getting a gold star award for all that you learned about Parisian sewers.
Yeah.
Um,
Look at everything that
look at everything I
look at
learned.
all the work that I've done.
Yes. Aren't you proud of me?
Aren't you? Yeah.
I can't. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna skip ahead is
yeah.
what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you read The Known World by Edward Jones, who's a local DC writer, actually famous, but lives in DC. I really admire that book. And he said in an interview that he didn't do a lick of research for it. It's set in pre Civil War Virginia. He said, I didn't feel like I needed to do any research. I don't need to know what kind of horse you were riding. I don't need to know, these specific details. He just, according to him, wrote it without any research at all. So I really admire that. I don't think I could do it, but I admire it.
Okay. I was gonna ask, I mean, because there is something in entertainment these days or media, this attraction or this desire, at least but from some fans, for accuracy and realism and things like that. Do you feel that kind of pressure to be super realistic or get that verisimilitude or whatever? Or do you feel that you should be allowed to play?
Oh,
Um,
I don't know if I should be allowed to play, but I sure do play. I I play around with chronology. I make shit up all the time, or because as a historical novelist, you sort of have to. There are all these places where the historical record falls silent, and it's up to you. It's your prerogative and joy, frankly, to go into these worlds and imagine your way out and figure out what how things might have gone down. So that to me is the fun part. But yes, you will. There are readers out there who enjoy nothing better than telling you when you got something you made their day.
uh-huh.
Mockingbirds hadn't gone as far north as the Hudson Valley by 1830, or things like that. That word wasn't part of the English language. Lots of any anachronism they jump onto. And I try to avoid the obvious kind of anachronisms. I don't, because they bug me too. There was a historical
Uh-huh.
novel recently where someone was eating garlic in 19th century New England. It's like, no, no, they wouldn't. And for some reason that stuck in my craw. I didn't send her a letter, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's like everyone has a different level of tolerance, and then there are writers who just completely mess with the whole plane, the whole time plane. They just kind of who's a good example? There was a series about Emily Dickinson that was it Apple TV recently, um,
Yes.
and they just basically gave up any pretense that this was 19th century. People would just do completely 21st century things in the course of it, and I was fine with that because those were the rules of the game.
Yeah. I watched a little bit of The Great on Hulu, the Catherine the Great show, and it was very similar. It was
Yeah,
very modern. And yeah, I don't mind that. I think as long as I kind of know what I'm getting into going in, you mentioned nonfiction. What brings you the most pleasure? Because I read nonfiction for pleasure as well, but I really consider fiction to be that's what I go to if I just want to feel the pleasure of reading. That's what I gravitate to.
yeah.
Is that the same with you, or are they equal, or have you thought about it that way?
I would say fiction works on me in a deeper place than nonfiction does, but I understand the stuff I review is generally about entertainment or culture. Um, so I have on my TBR pile is a biography of Joan Crawford, that's coming out in a couple months, which I'm totally looking forward to. But I'm not anticipating that it will be a great work of literary art. To me, I'm reviewing the content in essence, and that to me is more interesting than saying defining the style, because the style is most of these cases is pretty generic. So yeah, I guess fiction to me is still where my heart is. It's still where I feel things most deeply. But then I'm forgetting there are nonfiction works that do that as well. There are great nonfiction writers, obviously, who do that. Uh, Don McPhee leaps to mind. There's somebody who can really take you place that's factual, but still has all um, the feel, the pulse of a fictional world. Oh, Eric Larson and some of his stuff, some of his history books. I actually got to ask him that question. I interviewed him at the Smithsonian not too long ago. I said, "Do you? Is it fair to say you use the techniques of fiction to tell a non-fictional story?" And he said, "Absolutely. That's always been my goal." And I think he was inspired by Truman Capote, and so you can still get that vibe, that feel from a nonfiction book for sure. Just not the kind I review usually.
Yeah. Um, Another thing that, I've been doing over the past year is because the whole concept here is books that really kind of changed me as I was growing up, whether I was a kid or as an adult, different points of my life. So I've been starting to revisit some books that were very important to me when I was younger. And one of those, I just reread The Hotel New Hampshire by John Irving, which was a huge book for me when I was a kid. And a lot of it was there was a gay character in it. And,
Forgotten that.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't have a lot of that.
Nope.
So,
No, no, no.
not at all.
Nope. No
um,
representation. No.
yeah. But I reread it and I didn't like it.
Interesting.
It's like, it, yeah, I really didn't like it. And it was like all these memories I had of it. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, do I want to revisit a lot
I
of these
know. Be
books?
careful what you wish for. Yeah.
um, so I'm curious, do you revisit some of the books that were important to
I
you?
don't. Maybe for the reasons that you've just illuminated. I don't want to be just. I remember being blown away by Garp. Speaking of John Irving, when that book came out, I was amazed by it. It really expanded my sense of what a book could do, could be. And yes, I'd be afraid to go back and find out, oh, that wasn't so great. Or Garp himself, it would probably be a pretty problematic character.
Yeah.
There's swipes at feminism and stuff like that. Irving always had his sort of politically conservative side to him. So,
Hmm.
but
And it's
yeah,
it's there in Hotel New
yeah,
Hampshire for sure. But there's also, I'd forgotten how incesty that book was, and it's just like wildly. And so I'm like, I don't think he would put this out
it'd be
today.
tough. It'd be tough. It'd
But
be tough.
Garp was important to me as well, and
Yeah,
I think I'm probably not going to revisit it now because I don't want to destroy that particular one. But
yeah. I don't know if you find this too, but when I see a film of a work, it's hard for me to go back to the original work because I'm now seeing it through the lens of these actors. So
mhm,
when I see Jenny, if I were to read Garp again, I'd be seeing Glenn Close as Jenny.
yeah,
Sure.
and
Um,
you're definitely seeing Robin Williams,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, I know it's just to keep going back, but like The Shining, I read that so young. I had that perfectly, in my head. I saw the characters, and everything else. Then I saw the movie, and then everything changes, and it's nearly impossible not to see,
Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson and Duvall.
Yeah.
It's and so yeah, I've always been torn on movie adaptations for just that reason because it's like, what is this doing to my own ability to visualize and experience things?
Try reading The Wizard of Oz after you've seen the movie. You can't unsee it, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, Judy Garland is a wonderful avatar to have, but you can't unsee those Burt Lahr and Jack Haley and all those actors. And Margaret Hamilton, they're there. Maltese Falcon, the same. You can't unsee Humphrey Bogart once you've seen the movies. So that's why I always try to read the books first, so I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did it affect you? I mean, now that you've been adapted with The Pale Blue Eye, how does having that adaptation set in your mind with what you actually created as a
Hmm.
novelist?
That's a really good question. Well, I guess I should say that it's very faithful to the original book, which I really appreciated. And the writer director Scott Cooper consulted with me and showed me successive drafts of the script. So I was involved in a way that, frankly, contractually, I didn't need to be. It's just by his good graces. So I felt it was always very close and respectful to the book. But it is interesting that now, coming out 15 years after the book, I think, suddenly these lines are being spoken by Christian Bale, by Robert Duvall, by Gillian Anderson, whom I'm sort of crazy about. Um, and so, yes, and to hear their voices, put their particular spin on it, it does change the dialogue. Those lines of dialogue are coming out because now I hear Duvall or I hear Harry Melling, who played Edgar Allan Poe, and they doing what they do as actors. But it becomes a bit of a co-authorship at that point.
Yeah, I was just curious. Obviously, I've never been adapted. I don't think anybody would even
I
want
don't
to.
know.
Um,
Never say never.
yeah, well, definitely NC-17. So, so how is your reading? You know, I think reading changes over time. I have written and talked before about, I really came to a lot of sort of classic literature or other things post college, because my English classes in college kind of scared me away
Oh,
from the department.
uh,
Yeah, this is a lot about
it
me,
makes
but
me very
I was,
glad. I hate hearing people.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was, because I went to a small public school in Kentucky, and while Mr. Hensley was probably one of the best teachers if not the best teacher I had in my life, it was still there still just wasn't a lot pushing me forward. We didn't have AP, we didn't have all these additional things. So suddenly I was in a private college with all these private school kids and this and that, and they'd had all this experience. And I just felt I was always behind. I didn't always understand what was going on. And I was so self conscious that I just, closed in on myself, and decided to minor in history instead. Um, so after college, that's when I got into Faulkner and Thomas Wolfe and a lot of these other things. I was like, oh shit, I can read and understand these things on
Mhm.
my own. I don't need a professor to tell me. And that really changed the way I read for the next 10, 15 years. And at different times my habits have changed. Have the ways that you read, have they changed over time? I mean, how do they kind of move along with your life for you?
Yeah. I mean, the most obvious thing to say is that I can't read as much as I used to. I can't do anything for as long as I used to, but I certainly can't read for as long as I used to. So back in the day, and I wrote the Post article mentions this. I would sit on the beach. My family would go down to the Outer Banks for a week, and I really just sit on the beach all day under a tent, reading everything from Dostoevsky to Dorothy Sayers to whatever. I would just read for hours and hours on end, and I'm in sort of awestruck by that young man because there's no way I could do that now. There's no way I just have the endurance. So I definitely have to pick my battles reading. I'm not going to definitely jump into, well, Infinite Jest, for instance, which I know is a favorite of yours. I spent a week working on that one, and I got about a third of the way through, and then I didn't have the time left to kind of give it all I needed to.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love the book, but I also know that Infinite Jest fans are some of the most annoying people on the planet sometimes.
Well, it's funny. I think I
So,
told you this, but I confessed afterwards to an Infinite Jest fan. I very sheepishly said, "Oh, and I got through a third of that. I feel so bad." He said, "Oh, you read it all." So, that made me
I
feel a
tend,
little less guilty.
yeah, I tend to recommend his nonfiction to people
Love
because
his
it's a
nonfiction.
little, yeah, it's gorgeous. I used to give that to some of my writers who worked for me that I thought had really good potential to go far. I would give them a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again, just to encourage them. And, that was fun working with young writers, actually.
Uh, just what I'm groping toward, I think, is that I don't bring the same amount of ambition to my reading now that I
Okay.
used to. I mean, I would think of nothing of diving into like a Trollope, or Tristram Shandy, or something that's like 1,000 pages. That would just be heaven for me because I had the time and I had the attention and I suppose the ambition really to kind of hurl myself at them. And that's what I'm not now. So now, if I got a book that long, I'd be, let's see now. When am I going to find time to read that? When am I going to actually read that?
So I think I'm probably mentioned this to you before, maybe. Recently, I got the idea put into my head about, how many books you have left to read. I'm, as I said, the back half, that's a lot of what this is about is, what I learned from the first half of my life, what I'm learning in the second half of my life, if I'm being generous with my lifespan. I started realizing that, okay, say I read one book a week, maybe 50 books a year. Yeah. That's like 1,000 books by the time, by the time I pass away, maybe, or just can't read anymore. And that number seems so small to me in a way because I know one, I have hundreds of books around my house that I haven't even got to. I tend to reread things, and there's going to be new stuff coming out that I want. And I shouldn't read things like this. I put these things in my head probably, but now I kind of feel this a little bit of pressure
Oh,
um,
what, time
to do.
pressure? Existential
Yeah, I'm
pressure? Yeah.
yeah, I'm feeling existential time pressure that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able, to finish War and Peace and read some new stuff. And, it's, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm neurotic. Um, do you have any feelings like that about, literature, or am I just sticking it in your head and you're going
Well, yeah,
to curse me?
no, I did read War and Peace while I was working in House of Representatives. I had 1 hour lunch. It was a horrible job. So
Hmm.
my retreat, I went down to the Longworth building cafeteria and I read War and Peace for an hour. And that was just heaven. It was just a heaven sent. So I have very healing memories of War and Peace, but I'm so glad that I did get through it. But, yeah, the urgency for me is not just time. Both of my parents, for instance, had dementia beginning their early to mid 70s. So, given that family history, I don't even know how much mental space I'm going to have past the age of 70 for reading. So that gives it in some way a kind of increased urgency. Same thing with writing, by the way. I think, okay, I'm 61. I have at best maybe 10 years to keep writing, telling the stories. So what are those
Hmm.
stories going to be? So, but I kind of like that. It means it keeps me invested in my work. It keeps me invested in the world because I know there's always going to be another book to read. There's always going to be something to read. And that's the glory of it. But again, the futility of it too, because you're never going to get there. Maybe Harold Bloom did. I don't know. I think Harold Bloom and Michael Dirda, I think I've read every book between them ever written.
Now, do you still teach, or is that
No, no, I
okay?
stopped a couple years ago.
Okay. I was curious your thoughts having been a teacher, because I think one of the ways, we both obviously got into books really young. We had a lot of exposure to it, all that kind of thing. A lot of people, don't grow up in those sorts of environments. So school and things like that and teachers and that experience of learning to read in class is where they do
Hmm.
discover kind of the joy. I'm kind of curious if you have thoughts about, AI,
Um,
because one of the things I've noticed, is reading discussions of it is that kids are obviously using AI to write their reports and to do this and that. Yeah, I mean, I know we always had Cliff Notes and then
sure.
Spark Notes and other things. People have always found shortcuts, but it is so easy now to offload the experience of reading that. How do you think that's going to impact? I mean, just the life of literature.
Yeah, something's got to give, doesn't it? I was asked about AI. I was at a cocktail party just the other night, and I think five different people asked me, A, if I use AI, which I don't, just as a point of pride, but B, if I worried about being taken over by AI.
Hmm.
And I don't, I guess, because I don't think they can bring the human element that a really good story has, because they don't have human experience. They have just kind of synthesized data about the human experience. But I don't know. Maybe that's just what I tell myself. But yeah, I hadn't thought until now about how it's affecting reading too, because you no longer have to grapple with the original text. You can get just yeah, I don't know. I'm trying not to be one of those old guys who kind of shakes his fist at these newfangled innovations and um,
You I mean, it's hard. I mean, I love technology. I mean, we're sitting here recording this. The
right.
technology, even to do this,
Yeah,
is like
pretty great.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I love it. I've always looked forward to this kind of stuff. I like having an entire world's library of movies at my
Hmm.
fingertips and
Pretty
books.
great.
And, I don't, I used to have to drive an hour to Paducah to buy books, when I was a kid, because we didn't have a bookstore while I was growing up. Now it's like that. I
Yeah,
mean, I can have a book almost instantly.
yeah,
But, you know, AI, I have complicated, I mean, I don't use it. I'm very adamant I'm not going to use it for any sort of writing. I hate it when AI tries to suggest things for me. I'm like, I don't fucking need your help.
I mean, like when you're Googling and AI comes up and
It,
yeah.
Googling Apple, I need to turn it off on Apple again, because if you select a paragraph in Apple, it'll pop up a little, you know, button for you to push to like have it rewrite it for you, because apparently we didn't escape the nightmare of Clippy back in the 90s.
I
Um,
remember Clippy. Oh God, he was a nightmare.
oh,
Wow.
he was
Yeah.
awful. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I know how to write a fucking letter, Clippy. I'm good. But yeah, I mean, but then again, this podcast, when it's edited, some of the grunt work that I would normally do by hand will get done by that. So I'm cool with it for non-creative
Mhm.
grunt work stuff, but I don't like this taking over all the fun stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I used to say before AI was really an issue, I would say to students at teaching at the college level, undergraduate level, fiction writing class, and I'd say, the whole point of taking this course is to hear what your voice sounds like. So if you're gonna plagiarize, which was the issue back in those days, if you're gonna plagiarize somebody else's work, then it's pointless because it's not you. It doesn't tell you anything about yourself, and the whole point is to figure out what's in there, what stories are waiting to come out of you specifically. So that was the pitch I made then. I do think the smart folks in the universities that I'm hearing about are the ones who incorporate AI into their curriculum and say, in effect, okay, let's do the first draft of it via AI, and then let's look at ways to deepen what's on the page, because inevitably there'll be something kind of slipshod about what's there. They're just going to grab it, and as we know, they confabulate. I love that was an insert in the Chicago Tribune. Came out was talking about summer reading.
Yeah, made up complete books out of
real
complete whole
real
cloth.
authors, but with completely
Yeah,
made up titles. Yeah, it's like wow. So that
it's
is not
insane.
something you can trust
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah, yeah, I never thought I would be a Luddite, but I guess we all live long enough to become the thing we didn't think we would be.
Or
So
we become selective Luddites. I think that's what we're.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
like I'm fine with my Fitbit.
yeah,
I'm fine with my phone following me everywhere I
yeah,
go, being
yeah,
trackable by anybody who wants to track me.
yeah,
But this AI is going too far.
yeah. There's always that one final step. Yeah, I'm not going to give up my PlayStation or anything like
Exactly.
that. So,
Yeah.
um, so what are the things that you read for pleasure, like right now? Or actually, no, I'm sorry. If you could name a favorite book, what would that book be?
My default answer is a book I haven't read in 40 years. It was Middlemarch by George Eliot. I'm going back to the classics. I know. I read that in a wonderful course about the Victorian novel that I took in college. One of my favorite courses I ever took. I loved every book, every damn book we read, but there was something about Middlemarch. It was so brilliant on every level in terms of fiction, in terms of it was also a novel of ideas, a brilliant novel of ideas. And I got to the end of that. And I thought, God, I think George Eliot has done everything that a human being can do. It almost discouraged me from being a writer because I was like, wow, I think she got to everywhere a writer could get. Virginia Woolf had the same reaction to reading Proust. He actually depressed her because she thought there's nothing left for me to do. But of course, Virginia and I were both wrong. Everyone has a
Hmm.
story to tell, no matter how well stories have been told previously. Everyone has something to say, um, but yeah, I think I haven't gone back to it for the reasons we were talking about earlier. Would I love it as much? Would I be able to yield to it in the way that as an undergraduate I did? Would I have? I think I need to set it aside for when I have just unlimited days to spend.
Hmm.
That's why I'm looking forward in some ways to the end game. Assuming that you and I are both compos mentis, I'm looking forward to the day when I don't have deadlines and I literally can just sit in a chair and read. Because I think I might rediscover some of that primal feeling that I had back in the day when I just nothing would please me more than diving into a 800 word novel. I'm longing to reclaim that, and
Yeah.
the kind of second youth for reading. So that's the thing I'm crossing my fingers for.
So you're not going to do the Stephen King thing where you say you're going to retire and then keep writing like 3, 4 books a year
Well,
until the
he
end of
can't help
time.
himself. It's very clear. The man can't help himself. He can't, and he writes it. He writes at such an insanely fast level too. Uh,
Yeah, it's
it takes me 2 years to push a book into the world. That includes research, and includes edits and things like
yeah.
that. But it's for me, it's a long distance slog. He just seems able to just, I think, how many, 3,000 words a day, something crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah. For me, a
it's nuts.
500-word day is pretty good. And he's just getting going. That's before
Yeah.
breakfast for him. Yeah.
That's the warm up exercise. Yeah. I don't know. I have trouble getting my head around the idea of retirement. Like, it's like, I don't know what I look at a lot of people who are retired and I look particularly like at my mom and some other people. I'm just like, it's like, why don't you go do something? Go, you know,
Yeah, I know.
and I just, whether I'm doing something that's particularly, financially relevant or anything, the idea of just kind of not doing anything kind of scares me
I know.
in
It
a
feels like
way.
a little death, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
It's not that I'm a workaholic or anything. It's just my identity. And I'm going to assume this is somewhat true for you as well. My identity as a writer, even though that's not my primary career right now, my identity as a writer is always there. It's yeah, that if you ask me what I am, I'm a writer who works as a real estate agent. That's where I am. So I don't know how you turn that off. I mean, even if you're not doing it, you
that's the
know,
thing. I can't
on
imagine it.
deadlines.
Yeah, I can't imagine a life without what we do. I
Yeah.
can't imagine being, working at the local hardware store. And there's nothing wrong with working at the local hardware store. That may be something I do just to pass
Yeah.
the time, but where I don't have something I'm working on, because that to me is what keeps me going day to day, is some project, something that I'm working on that needs to get done. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I've got a story to tell in some venue or other. I do a lot of freelance writing. I serve a lot of masters in the end, but the deadline, knowing that somebody's expecting words from me, has a really galvanizing effect, and it's one I would miss if it went away, because then what who am I, what do I do? Even between books, I am very having existential crises about who I am if I'm not working in a book. It's like who am I? Or it's probably like an actor between shows, if you're not this character, who are you, at the end of the day? So it'll be a real challenge. It'll be a real challenge. The people I know who are making retirement work, and a lot of people my age are retired, are the ones who had those brutal careers. They're working Wall Street, or they were doing 24-hour shifts as a doctor, and
Yeah.
now they get to make ceramics and put their feet up on an ottoman, and it feels joyous, I think, after a career they've had. And I think the difference is that I love my career, I love my work, so having to give it up for whatever reason would be very hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, obviously we're both very lucky in our different paths, but we're
Right,
getting to do stuff that we like
right.
and stuff that we
That's such,
enjoy.
that is such, I consider that such a blessing. I consider myself a very fortunate man that I'm still using my English degree, uh, 40 years after, I love it.
Yeah. I'm still using my journalism
There you
degree.
go. I have a journalism
my,
degree too. Yeah, using it
yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. My print journalism degree. Boy, that I really chose
Right. What were we
the wrong
thinking?
branch.
Yeah, I've a master's in journalism from McGill, and yeah, well, 1 year master.
I didn't really, I forgot you had a
Yeah,
master's in
it's my
journalism.
only postgraduate degree. So
Okay.
yeah, but God, that was super helpful. Oh my God, learning how to write a lead, I don't think there's anything better for a writer to learn some level.
Oh,
How to begin, how to draw people in from that very first line. It's so important to know how to do that.
I think that's very true. And I think that learning how to be concise and how to analyze the information that you're getting and then turn it back around to somebody is very important. I think the one bad thing I got from it is deadline writing. When I have a lot of time, it's hard to get anything out. But if it's due like in 2 hours, bam, I can
Yeah.
like crank out 2,000 words or
Yeah, well,
something.
the secret is giving yourself deadlines along the way, sort of mini
Yeah.
deadlines. Like chapter one is due by this day. Yeah, that's what I do. That's how I trick myself, give myself a
Yeah.
sense of urgency.
I'm the worst boss of myself, though. That's I'm a better boss of other people. All right. Well, any um, any final thoughts just on reading in general, or deep thoughts or final
Deep
thoughts.
thoughts. Deep thoughts. Oh gosh. I just I don't know that anything can replace reading. And honestly, and not to sound Luddite again, but I don't know that anything will honestly replace the book. The codex, I suppose, is as it. I think the book is still the best delivery device that we still, after all the technology we were just discussing. I don't think anything can improve a book for just imparting information, for guiding us somewhere where we haven't been. So that's my hope for the future, that books will always be around because people will always need them. We will always need stories. In the same way need food and water, we'll need stories. That's what I'm counting on, by the way, in post-apocalyptic times, because I won't have any survival skills whatsoever. I won't be able to hunt or kill zombies,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you a story about what happened about what happened today.
Okay.
I
As long as
think
I
I'll be eaten. I think I'll be eaten pretty early.
yeah. Well, as long as I don't end up like the guy in the Twilight Zone episode
Oh my God.
who breaks his, and I
Well,
forgot to take these
yeah, he
off at
breaks his
the yeah.
glasses. He can't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. He's got the Reader's Dream. An entire public library has spilled its contents. There's nobody to bug
Hmm.
him. The rest of the
My
world is
worst
dead.
nightmare.
Yeah, and then he
Worst
breaks his glasses. It's like, oh, maybe there's
So
some easy reading titles you could find in that. So.
yeah, well, surely there's got to be at least one magnifying glass that survives the end of the world. So, what would you like to tell people about? What have you got coming up, in addition to some of the past stuff that I had mentioned?
Well, see, The Wilds just came out in paperback, so that is available at wherever you buy books. I always encourage people to do the independent bookstore course, which is another lovely element of reading. I should add, just going into an independent bookstore and seeing titles that you would have found otherwise, or a used bookstore for that matter. So that's happening, and then I'm also turning The Wilds into a play, and so we're trying to find homes for that. And then I'm working on the next thing, which is something I can't divulge too much, but it will be back to Victorian England again. And it's fun, but it's boy, is it work. When I think about what
Yeah,
I still have to write, I'm about 26,000 words into probably a book that'll be at least 3 times that length. So yeah, it feels far right now, and I'm getting a little stressed, but you know how that works.
yeah, I do. But well, I look forward to that. Is this the first time you've done a play,
I
or
actually wrote a play during COVID as a
okay,
COVID project. It was performed at the DC. What do you call it? The Fringe, UC Fringe Festival,
Fringe Fest?
which no
Yeah,
longer exists. Yeah, The Wilds is workshopped recently at UC Santa Barbara. They have a program where they work with student actors and professional actors and directors to mount a play. It was and it was an amazing experience, sort of getting it up on its feet and realizing it. The same thing I realized with The Pale Blue Eye. The challenges of adapting a story from one medium to the other are extreme. And when it's a book that's being adapted, you have to prepare yourself for losing most of it. Pretty much,
yeah.
most
It's
of it
like
has to go away. Yeah, so you have to figure out, okay, what needs to be told in every scene. What needs to be told and what doesn't. So I find it very stimulating, but it's also that old phrase, "Kill your darlings." There are many, many darlings who will get killed in the course of that process. But it's fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, the dialogue heavy. I've been working just because I want to try it. I've been working on a screenplay just to
Yeah.
kind of teach myself how to
I
do it
want
a
to do
little
that too.
bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's different. It's just such a weird way to think, to leave so much up to someone else, because I don't think I should, I'm not the Coen brothers. I'm not going to write like the world's most detailed script, but I don't know. I think sometimes exercises like that are good just to,
Sure.
even if you don't, even if nobody sees it, it's worthwhile, I think.
But you're right. There's an implicit faith or trust that your collaborators down the road, the directors, the actors, all the cameramen, whatever, will be filling out all those dimensions that you had to leave behind. That's
Yeah.
the hope, anyway. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard in like getting over. I mean, that's the lovely thing about writing your own book is I know every word on that page is mine. Nobody else's. I have complete control of what's on that page. But once it goes into a play or a screenplay goes out, all bets are off. Suddenly
Yeah.
it belongs to other people.
It's like watching the kid go to college.
Yeah,
They're not yours anymore completely.
yeah.
So, well, Lou, thank you so much
Such a
for
pleasure,
joining me for
Sam.
this.
This has been fun.
This has been great, and hopefully, I'll see you again in a shorter time frame than
Yes, well,
the
we're
last
not that
time.
far. We can totally
I
make this happen.
know.
Yeah.